We know you're out there. We can feel you now. We know that you're listening. You're listening to us. You're listening for change. We don't know the future. We didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. We came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you want them to see. We're going to show them a world without masks, a world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries, a world where anything is possible. We're going to show them our secret identities. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
Okay. Welcome to the Secret Identities Podcast. Thank you for those of you that have known about this coming for a while and have been patient with us getting it out there. And welcome to those of you that are new to the podcast and new to the idea. What we're planning on doing with the show is we're going to have comics, shows, movies, pop culture discussion, reviews, all things comics, interviews with creators, and so forth. The show will be available on Spotify for audio only, streaming on Twitch, Kick, and TikTok. Segments will be available on YouTube Shorts and YouTube, and full video will be available on YouTube and Patreon, with special pre-show, post-show, and retro movie review content for patrons and channel members on YouTube. I'm going to throw it to my partner first. Telly, introduce yourself.
My name is Telly, known on the show as TDubb. It's my secret identity. Just happy to be here, be in front of the fans. Jody and I have been friends for more than 30 years, so we thought one day, why not take our regular conversations that we have about comics and comic book movies, toys, video games, He-Man, whatever it is, and put it on all our childhoods and backgrounds as artists, colors, editors, writers, things like that, and put it all into one balled up piece of paper and throw it at each other back and forth. So why not do it? You're going to hear great opinions and commentary from things of that nature, and just hearing the real side of things from a fan's point of view. And we want to give back to you fans that have been supporting us over the years, and just give you a safe haven, a great place, a fun place to discuss things that we love.
And as Telly mentioned, well, I'm Jody. I'm known on the show as Savage Jody. That's a nickname that goes back to when Telly and I met 30 years ago. A lot of road between he and I, as fans, as friends, as creators together, and then now we're moving into this new chapter where we're still creating together, but we decided this friendship was enough fun that other people might enjoy viewing it. So we're moving into this. We have a fair amount to offer the industry because of who we are and where we come from. We both have experience as retailers. We both have lifelong fandoms in comics, these movies, and now as creators in the industry as well, on a smaller scale. But we've still been creators for a handful of years, and we're still working to get our products out into the market. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I guess our first step is who are we and what our connection is to this industry. So we're going to have a little segment where we have our secret identity, secret origin. And Telly, what's your secret origin?
Well, Jody, one thing I want to put in there is that upcoming guests that we have on the show, no matter what genre they're in, we're going to ask them what their secret origins are in relation to how comic books, how people got started. That's one of the things that I get asked about at conventions all the time. How did you get started? Why did you start doing this? How did you teach yourself the things that you know? So my origin goes all the way back to always wanting to be a comic book artist, learning how to draw. From what my parents told me and relatives told me is that I was drawing as soon as I started writing. So I would say probably around 3 or 4 years old, just getting into comic books. My dad used to take me to 7-Eleven to buy my comic books. before, I discovered that they were comic book stores in high school. Actually, when I met Jody, he was one of the few people that actually told me that comic book stores were an actual thing out there. So, to my surprise and delight, that journey I will take you on in future episodes in parallel to what we're doing. But yeah, buying my comic books from 7-Eleven and taking them home, kind of learning my favorite artists, tracing over them, and then just one day just trying to do it myself, having that confidence to be able to draw on my own without tracing, and learning all the fundamentals from my favorite artists that I read each month, and X-Men comic books and Spider-Man comic books, Superman, Batman. I was into the normal genre of what everybody else liked, what people talked about on the school bus, what people talked about in class. So comic book art was what attracted me. Just seeing the different interpretations of the different characters in relation to how Todd McFarlane drew Superman as opposed to John Romita and John Romita Jr. Jim Lee drawing X-Men as from when John Byrne and Dave Cockrum drew, or John Buscema drew those characters, and Avengers with Jack Kirby. I guess growing up in the 90s, I was a big supporter and a big admirer of the image age of comics. So I guess that's where my style kind of migrated. A lot of people said, oh, you drew like Will Sportation, or you drew like Mark Silvestri. I wish I drew that good. But there's a lot of learning curve. Trying to develop your own style without copying was the hardest thing. And we're talking the 90s. So this is pre computer age coloring. This is pre AI, or whatever you want to call that business that's going on today. So I think just trying to learn and absorb, be a sponge, because we didn't, artists of our caliber and that age group, we didn't have places, we couldn't afford to go to comic conventions that were out of our area. So being able to meet the artists, get portfolio reviews, going to a comic book convention was almost like going to Hollywood. So it was a far stretch for our area growing up in the DMV area of Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So any chance you got of being able to research, read the stories in comic books and the old Wizard magazines in the interviews, I would read those interviews over and over again and kind of absorb what they shared and how they broke in. And hopefully one day I got my big chance in order to get accepted and brought into one of these companies like Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, or any of those companies back in the day that you hear about. So comic art was my thing, still is my thing. You'll learn, the more you learn and listen to the podcast or watch the podcast, you'll hear more about Jody and ours journey into comics and where we are to this day. But I love comic books. I love the comic book movies, anything that's supporting them. I love meeting the fans at shows, being on both sides of the table. I love visiting comic book shops. It's almost like one of those home improvement shows on HGTV. I love going to see how people interpret their side of the comic genre and seeing what they can bring to the table as far in attracting fans and getting fans to come into the store to buy comic books. What's their point of view? And I love seeing the freedom of expression and just going in every Wednesday and buying comic books on new release day. It's a big thing that I relate to back to my childhood and now in my 40s. So
I guess that makes it my turn. Well, my secret identity, my secret origin has a lot of layers to it because I can remember when I was a kid, I was born into I had my older brothers, and from my earliest memories of Christmas, I can remember Meager Spider-Man and Captain America action figures, the big ones that had like clothes on them, like a Ken doll. And I remember we would get those for Christmas and we'd break them, and my father would always have to fix them. Or when I was a kid, there was nothing to do in my neighborhood, so we would walk down to the local 7-Eleven and we get Slurpees, and they'd have the origin of Spider-Woman on the Slurpee cups, that classic era. And so, like, superheroes always a part of my DNA. And when I was about 12 years old, one of my brother's older friends, my brother was much older than me, he said he saw me with a wrinkled old comic book. I don't even know where I got it from. And he said to me, and it's probably one of the only comic books I'd ever owned. He said, "Hey, so you like comics?" And I was like, yeah, I like comics. He said, "I got some at home. I can come bring them to you." And I thought he was, going to bring me like a wrinkled up old stack of, Archie comic books or something, which would have been fine too, because my brother and I would just sit there and trace them and we would draw. And he came over to my house with about 5 or 6 short boxes of comics, and he dumped this load of comics on me from, like, just, I had no idea the gold mine that I had fallen into. It was Claremont X-Men, issues of Alpha Flight, Rom the Space Knight, all this really cool deep bench Marvel and DC stuff from like the coolest era, from the 80s, from like the late 70s on to the 80s. So, like, I had all the Magistrate saga, the first appearance of Gambit. Like, I mean, he dropped some books on me, man. So I kind of became a comic book fan because I accidentally fell into Scrooge's money bin, and I was like, so I had all this stuff to dig through, and I loved tearing through it and learning about the characters, going through the Marvel handbook for the handbook for the Marvel universe, or DC's Who's Who comic books, and I just loved the history of the characters, the story of the characters. And then the death of Superman happened, and at the time, I was a disaffected, going on becoming a teenager, and I thought, I read in the newspaper they were killing Superman, and at the time I thought,
heard about it on the news.
At the time I thought, good, because it's about time. I thought, this guy is a relic. I felt disconnected from the character, but it drove me to the store for the first time in a real way. And I went to the store, and when I opened up the door to buy those comics, what was on the shelf, as Telly mentioned, you had Image Comics, which was a whole new flashy kind of whiz bang, beautiful art, as we'd seen before in other comics, and I started roller coaster ride to go into a comic book store in the early 90s. I think it was probably peak comics. I mean, I hate to say that because I'm not going to step on comics now, but sales wise and the amount of excitement around the industry because of the death of Superman and the Image really changed the game in a lot of ways. So I accidentally fell into a job working in the comic shop because of an incident while I was there. So here I was connected to a very exciting time in comic books, and I'm reading through what I thought was, like, when you hear about comics on the news, that's exciting. That didn't happen back then. And when I read the last page of The Death of Superman, I was like, it hit me. I was like, they really killed him. And I felt emotionally kind of messed up from it. And then I realized, oh, this is just bigger than some story. And that was a powerful moment for me that made me realize, well, no, comics are bigger than just these silly books. And they carried a lot of weight with me. They resonated with me in a lot of ways. And because of my connection to that store, I started kind of like a personal storefront of my own, where I would bring books to school and I would sell them to people that I knew that were also in the business. Because I don't know if you guys remember, you didn't tell everybody you were a comic fan back in those days.
Oh no, that was a secret identity that you had to
exactly.
Keep secret.
Yeah, we had almost a secret handshake. You heard someone use the word Wolverine, you'd kind of give them the eye and be like, "Did you say Wolverine?"
Yeah.
So
do you know who that is?
So, and through that business relationship, I met this man. And if you told me 30 years ago we'd be fast friends from me selling him comic books, I wouldn't have believed you. But honestly, Telly was my anchor, because in a lot of ways I drifted away. When we met, we loved talking about what was going on with the business, and I was still calling myself an artist at the time and doing my doodles and my tracing and drawing my superheroes. But when I met him and a friend that also was an artist, I saw what they were doing, and I thought, wow, I'm way behind them. But I think I have some stories to tell. So we agreed back then we were going to make some comics together. And I said, well, I'll be the writer and you can be the artist. But, life happens. We finished high school and things drifted in different directions. And I joined the military and I went away. But this man never let me go. He never let the industry get out of me. I was still that guy. I still keeping my secret identity. Whenever a superhero movie would come out, I would say, this is based on a comic book. Or those ones that would sneak out where the comic book got made into a serious movie, and you're like, this was a comic book first. I always wanted to lend credibility to the industry that brought me to the table. But Telly would send me care packages full of comics to keep me abridged on what was going on in the industry, and I'd be like, wow, things are getting kind of weird. I get these care packages full of articles, and one day we started this. I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to start doing comics with you guys. I told you all those years ago I was going to write for you. He said, well, that's good, because we're going to a comic convention. And I was like, oh man, that's pretty nerdy. I was like, that's a little geeky for me, Telly. You go to those? He said, yeah, I've been to a bunch of them. They're great. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I got to do it if we're going to make these comics together. And I guess that was 2007?
Yeah, something around there.
2007, Wizard World Philly.
Yeah.
And I walked in that door, and I had found my tribe. It was the first time I felt like there were people like me in the world, other than the rare stragglers that I found through this gentleman here. But so ever since then, we've stuck together. It's been a little bit of work and a whole lot of play and a whole lot of barbecue wings.
Yes, indeed, a whole lot of barbecue wings and steak and cheese as well. That was the spot. Wizard World Philly, I think, at even as a fan and exhibitor combined, I think I went to probably 10 of those between the very first one in 2001 all the way till 2012. I think I went to about 10 of them. So
I only did as exhibitor, but how many do you think I did as an exhibitor? 4? You had to have gone to far more than I did.
3 or 4 maybe. Yeah, because I would say, 2008 was the first year when we decided to do that, and then we took a couple years off, and then ended up doing it. I believe in 2012, something like that.
I think 2012 was the John Snyder year.
Yeah.
Not the year of the picture, but the year that I first met him at the convention. That's a story for later.
Yeah, definitely that. And we can't forget the Greg Capullo in Baltimore.
Oh yeah, that's another story for you guys.
That's a story for another day. Yeah, that was hilarious. So. Yeah, that we had some interesting ones. A lot of different locales, and each convention, no matter where it was, or even if it was the small indie shows, they all have a likeness and a story to their own. I mean, if we went down and talked, I actually have every program of all the ones that we attended. So, I have to dig those up and talk about the guests and the experiences that we had with those, the hotels, the drive time, Just so many things. I mean, I'm surprised. I think I've only seen one or two indie films done that way, but a road trip to a Comic Con is probably one of the best premises for a movie or a buddy film that could be possible. I'm surprised they haven't done more. I mean, if I had my take in the industry, directors, producers, writers, actors, actresses, things of that nature. Oh my goodness, you could make a trilogy. You could make almost a Star Wars epic trilogy plus another trilogy and about 15 prequels to that particular subject
and
because there's so many points of view that you could go through.
and
The after
fertile
parties,
fertile
the
ground for
drinking
creating
bros.
too. Fertile ground for
Oh
creating.
yes,
I mean, you should
yeah,
hear some of our discussions that we've lost on
yeah,
car rides. Telly and I started a game where we would just pick something from the industry and say, "How would you fix this? How would you write
yes.
this? How would you do this?" And it's actually something I taught my son to do. So now when I take car rides with my son, he wants to play that game. So like we're rewriting the Marvel and DC universe every time we go on a long trip.
Yeah, that is true. A lot of great times. A lot of great times from back in the day, and a lot more to come. So excited about that. But yeah, we're so stoked to be able to bring you guys this and be able to reach out and have some guests and for you to get to know us and us to get to know you.
One thing Telly mentioned in the secret origin is when we do talk to people, we're going to want to know their secret origin. When we were doing our comic and we did a few interviews with comics, so much of the comic interviews are about the product and not the people. And I think what's really interesting is the people because they pour so much themselves in the product. You could come and talk to us about your product, but I want to know about you as a person. I want to know about you as a member of this community, as a part of this industry, because we're the ones that are going to keep this industry around. We're the ones that are going to keep it strong, and we need to invest in the people that care about this industry, not the products. The products are going to come and go. So I think it's important that we honor those people. We take an interest in those people, both creatives, both retailers, just people, just fans. So if you come on our show, get ready for a big hug and a warm welcome because we want to talk about who you are. We don't want to talk about what you're selling as much. Would love to hear about that too because we want to buy it, but we want to buy you as well.
Yeah, well, some of the biggest news to come out in the last week or so is the changes at Marvel with Buckley getting replaced. It's been all over the timelines, and some people say it's definitely needed because the way that they're trying to integrate the uh, Marvel Cinematic Universe with the comic books, a lot or most people are saying it's a not a good look, not a good move to do so. Because I'm a big proponent into when they know they pre-plan for these phases or these Marvel movies, and they've used to get inspiration from the comic books and the older stories that we grew up on in the 80s and 90s, even the 70s, and some of the concepts, depending on how old the characters are. And that to me seemed like it worked out better. But of course, you have to update for audiences in 2025, 2026 to get the kids' attention or the fan base's attention. You have to update certain things. And then with Marvel, Disney not having rights to all of the characters that were included, like Infinity Gauntlet and Secret Wars and Hearsay, I so they had to use some replacement characters in certain integral parts of the story. So with that being said, uh, as a fan, I love seeing those storylines come to life and seeing how they play out, knowing that they had changes coming. But that's what kept you hanging on to see the next movie and the next movie to see how they would homage or show tribute to those huge stories that we grew up reading. But what I was getting at is that when you're pre-planning for these movies and these big events to happen on screen, when you're casting, you know what these characters are going to end up being and what's going to go on before the fan base knows. But as a marketing standpoint, on the comic side of things, rather than just mirroring everything, I think it's the company's uh, responsibility and privilege to be able to coerce these fans to bring them into the comic shop and make them want to, hey, I just seen a great Daredevil movie or a great Daredevil show. I want to go in and read comics that follow these type of stories. Hey, I just saw a great X-Men movie. I want to go into the theater. I want to go at home or go into the comic shop and buy comics and go home and read more about these characters. So I think one of the biggest explanations, or uh, one of the biggest things that they had that I think they failed at was the 2000 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies that Sam Raimi did. A lot of people like those stories, and I think they dropped the ball. They had a big chance to do where Jeffrey Scott Campbell at the time, who was hot off of Gen 13, just about to go into Danger Girl, and they had him draw I think it was a year's worth of stories for Amazing Spider-Man. And with his art and him being a hot artist at the time, for it would have been a big draw for people to help, because Spider-Man was coming fresh off the Spider Clone series in the comic books, and you couldn't give those comics away at the time. Now, to be nostalgic 20 years later, yeah, people are going back and picking up that stuff so they can relive those times just like anything else. But I think the timing of that marketing, if they would have had a hot artist at a time doing the covers and doing the interiors when he was doing interiors back then, and having them come straight out the movie theater and going into a comic shop with a book going like that, I think they dropped the ball big time. And that was just one of the situations where Marvel didn't capitalize on the marketability of that transition between the cinematic universe and the comic book side of things.
I think it's a little short-sighted to try to establish a tight parity between the cinematic. We're going to just say cinematic universe for the sake, whatever it is, whether it's MCU, whether DC, whatever, or even Sony, because the movies have been successful for the most part because they've been able to mine the fertile ground of all the things that happen in the comic books. There's 100 stories that did not get made into movies. They got to choose the best ones. They got to choose the most successful ones. So I think that if they try to pull the comics in tight, I've said this before to other people, I like the cinematic Nick Fury. He's far more relevant than the comic book Nick Fury ever was. But I don't think that means that the comic book Nick Fury never had a place in the world. So, but they caused a situation where the movie fans were expecting one thing, and the comic fans that were classicists, they wanted the other. So they had to manufacture this really contrived story to inject this character in the universe to fix that Schrodinger's cat situation that they caused. And there's other things that are like that, where they changed a character in the movies or on television, and then the comic book version starts to look more like that version, which alienates classic fans just to satisfy people that aren't coming into the comic shop. Because for the most part, it's been proven that movies do not cause a significant uptick in long-term comic book readership. So you have the movies are only successful because they're able to mine the stories that are successful from the comics, and the movies do not cause an increase to overall readership. And then my last concern is there's a larger push for inclusion, for accessibility, for representation in the film universe. So they start to color by numbers. They start to choose their characters for their Avengers to match all the people that might come to that movie. But then that permanently changes your Avengers. You didn't need to make that change because in the comics all those people represented. It's just all those characters aren't making it to film. So if you really wanted to represent those people better, give them better representation in film. Don't change who that character is going forward. So like I think that the movies should stay the movies, and it's proven they can be successful. It's only when they started messing with the formula and they started pushing weird plots that weren't that successful in the comics, to be honest with you. You know, the Marvel Now kind of stuff wasn't that successful, yet somehow some of it bleeded over into the MCU to honestly diminishing results. People aren't happy with it, and it's kind of got a lot of people to check out and call superhero fatigue. But it's not superhero fatigue. It's not delivering them the things that they loved in the first place. They started to track, oh, well, it wasn't enough to have guys and their girlfriends. They wanted girlfriends and then their friends. So you weren't satisfied with the $1 billion you made off Avengers. The next one had to be bigger than that. So now you have a lot of people crying superhero fatigue because box office has been steadily going down, but you've been steadily giving them a more watered down product because you're not taking the time to introduce characters well. You're trying to shoehorn them into movies, or you know, you watch Thunderbolts was a fine movie, but nobody walked in at Thunderbolts expecting them to be elected as your next Avengers team. That just happened, and we were like, "Wait, what?" Like, no, that's not what we signed up for. We wanted Thunderbolts and Avengers. We didn't want you to just say, "Oh, by the way, this is what you got," because we don't want to pay those actors anymore. I understand that, that's another problem. Is that the other problem is that in the film world, actors are going to get successively more expensive as you go on, which means you're going to have to change them out more often. So you cannot expect to represent your comics in the same way because you have a status quo reset cycle in a comic. You can't divorce people from their favorite character because some actor didn't want to show up for the next movie.
Yeah, and I think that they also suffer from the mapping out of the movies, the phases. I just don't think that they're thinking more outside the box, and they're not seeing the big picture when it comes to, you know, a finality of where they're going with the movies. You know, as you travel through the phases, I mean, it looks like a cross country map stopping everywhere. You don't, phase out the movies. If you're going to have sequels to the movies, separate them in phases that make sense and map the fans through the movies. I still think, you know, they always kept saying throughout all this, and with the rights being owned by somebody else, is they wanted to do another Incredible Hulk movie. Well, what they could have been doing since Avengers 1 is doing a parallel story where you had a 5 to 10 minute, didn't have to be all at once. It could have been sporadic through the Avengers movies where there's a Hulk storyline going alongside the main story. It's all about the pacing and all the way through 2 or 3 phases to get to a final point and then do a movie. You could have been doing the whole part where, you know, he was too destructive and uncontrollable. He had his problems changing from Bruce Banner to Hulk, him going out, being sent by the Illuminati to the other Hulk planet, doing the Planet Hulk storyline the whole time that you're doing the Avengers movies. I think you're up to like Avengers 6 by the time you got that. Could have got the rights straightened out and did a full-size Hulk movie, full-length Hulk movie, and you got a great storyline going on parallel to your regular story.
Do you really think the Hulk can support his own movie? I mean, I understand we've had a few, but we've had great
writing, I think you could. If you had a great director, great writing and pacing, I think it could work. Because see, when you're running that parallel storyline, you're having him interact. If you did that storyline in Avengers 1, Avengers 2, Avengers 3, Avengers 4, maybe the Thor Ragnarok movie, and then he jumps out maybe had a cameo with the Red Hulk that was in the Falcon movie, Falcon Captain America movie, and then so on and so forth. And then you do now it's time for the Planet Hulk storyline, or him coming back from outer space back to Earth to get his revenge on the Illuminati when it's called World War Hulk.
Right.
That could have been animated. It could have been a live action Hulk series, like a 6-episode series. But then, I think a full length Hulk movie. It could have been a Wolverine versus Hulk movie or something.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think they've actually utilized Hulk very well.
Yeah.
As a supporting character, because you're able to use Banner and Hulk for muscle, they're able to use him for comedy. Now, I think the only hope of having a real... Now, I don't know how I'd write it. It would take me some time to figure it out. But Smart Hulk or Mr. Fix-It is the only way you're going to get a real Hulk movie with any substance where he's not the bad guy, the force of nature that needs to be controlled by a whole lot of other supporting cast, or supporting cast like he was in Thor Ragnarok. But I think honestly, he's been the X factor in a lot of movies. Hulk has shined more as a background character than he did in his own films. The Banner movie was atrocious. I can't think of a lot of good that came out of that movie, and I'm of the generation where I'm like, oh, that one good scene, and Telly and I talk about this often, is like, we're from the generation where comic book movies didn't get made. So when you got one that you weren't satisfied with, you kind of try to justify it to people or yourself, and you say, well, that wasn't like the comic books, but that thing that happened, So I still have a tendency to watch even the most dissatisfying superhero film and say, it wasn't that good, but there's that one thing that happened. And there aren't many in the deep bench of superhero movies that we have now that I can't find a whole lot of positive to say about it. And unfortunately, the Banner Hulk movie is one of them. And then the Flash movie. The Flash movie is a contender. There wasn't a whole lot saving that, and I'm not one to hate on the DCEU and the Snydervision, but I think that the problem with Hulk is that when he's most dynamic, and the best time to watch him is when he can provide very little to the conversation. So that leaves you with an exposition dumping villain, a stupid sidekick that's just going to narrate the whole thing like Godzilla is attacking, a la Kat Dennings from the Thor movies, or having a character that's intelligent enough to speak for himself. Now, I think if they could find a way to make Fix-It a thing, and have like a Mr. Fix-It story with Smart Gray Hulk in the white tux jacket.
I heard that's rumored as a cameo scene in, I believe it's I've heard Spider-Man movie.
I've heard it too, but I believe so little anymore.
Yeah, that's, you don't know what to believe anymore, but I think that would be pretty awesome if they did.
Yeah, I mean, if you could bring in if you can bring the X-Men into the MCU and then have like a Madripoor story with Wolverine, and then have Hulk show up in his Mr. Fix-It personality. I mean, that would be awesome to see that.
Yeah.
But you got to lay a lot of groundwork to explain how that happens, and I think that the hard part is making that happen. Now, you could go the World War Hulk way if you want a big bombastic movie and things like that. But I think at the end of the day, I think the last thing we need is another movie where a bunch of superheroes are punching each other in the face. And I think that's all it's going to lead to. So all you'd be able to do by making that movie is demonstrate that the Hulk is a nuclear bomb that cannot be trusted. And they'll never be able to make anything out of him again. Yeah. And I don't need a character like Hank Pym, which is not in the films, but in the comic books, is forever shadowed by that one dark story they told with him. and you can never access him again. I'd rather have goofy Ruffalo Hulk making jokes in the back of a Thor movie occasionally than trying to force some superhero movie to happen with him and have it turn out to be bad. We don't need another origin story, and there's not much interesting about the Hulk outside of his origin story, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think he's one of the very few characters where his origin story generally only has to be told, once. And I don't know if it's budget concerns showing how and all the CGI you have to do that. But I think pretty much people have not complained about not seeing the origin story told. How people complain about the Batman origin being told over and over again, or the Superman origin being told over and over again. I think the more interesting in terms of for me, the more interesting thing is how he manages his time between Bruce Banner and Hulk. More or less how Spider-Man manages time between being a superhero and going to school at the same time. The Hulk is the same way. We don't want to see how he became the Hulk. We know that's locked in our mind. We won't forget it because it was so terrifying and so much pain involved compared to these other characters that just, hey, I put on a super suit and jumped off my apartment building roof. With the Hulk, it's more or less as, how does this guy keep turning into this monster and then turning back into his human form and then ending up in places where he doesn't remember anything? So I think it's more or less people want to see how he progresses and how he's living his everyday life to be the Hulk, rather than, or even if you got to that stalemate where he stayed the Hulk more than he when he was reverting. So I think they touched on that in the comics, but that's the difference between the comics and the cinematic universe. So it's take your pick with him. All I know is from a fanboy standpoint, I was really disappointed in Infinity War when he got his ass handed to him by Thanos that quickly and was humbled, and then he never got his revenge. Endgame, I loved Endgame, great movie from beginning to end, but my piece was, is Hulk going to get to take on Thanos again?
Well, that was a lazy writing. That was a lazy writing decision because they had to take the Hulk off the board to balance the power levels against Thanos. So so the Hulk experiencing PTSD because he got bitch slapped by Thanos is just kind of a ridiculous idea in my opinion. Yeah. And then now I do like how they kind of even that up by giving Bruce the Hulkbuster armor to fight in the Battle of Wakanda. I don't feel like it was shown enough, and I think we should have seen more of that maybe through another movie. But the Hulk could be a funny character. We saw that in Ragnarok. But the problem is that you have to pair him with somebody else. So if you have to pair him up with somebody else, then why not make him the extra in somebody else's movie? So you can tell that B plot. You can tell the Hulk story in a B plot. I just don't think that it needs its own film. So why bother working out those distribution rights from Paramount? Because
I understand that. But I mean, like they do have the rights to use them. Why not use them in smaller fragment pieces and tell the story for the long term? Yeah, and you're right. You could get away with not having, and that can be your excuse, is that, they don't have the rights, so they can't do a full-on movie. But I still think doing those pieces where instead of writing them out like you did, it was a lazy way to write them out, you still have that little bit that you can give, because people are going to the movies going, yeah, it's an Avengers movie, but I want to see what the Hulk's doing right now. And this is what he's doing. A 10-minute interlude where, he's off on another planet fighting, and he finds out that, he has to go back to Earth, and, what's going to happen when he does get back. And, I think that's something that they could address, and it still could be something that they address. I've heard rumors of him and Wolverine finally scrapping it out in one of the upcoming movies. And I think it's a lot of different ways they can do that, because Logan's side of things, where he's more human, like the Hugh Jackman does really well, and he's talking to this doctor not knowing that he's the Hulk, and then something happens and they get into a squabble, and then you see that Hulk versus Wolverine take. It could be a 5-minute fight scene, but people are going to eat that up, especially when he pops those claws and he sees the Hulk change and sees that reflection. You know they're going to do that, and it's going to be pretty awesome.
So I think they squandered an opportunity, because Whedon was really building that relationship between Natasha and Bruce and the Hulk.
Yeah.
So going into Age of Ultron, you had the sun's getting pretty low, big guy. You had your built-in buddy movie. She could have been the companion for Bruce. She could have been the +1 for the Hulk. You could have pulled off a movie with the two of those together. You would have had everything you have needed to flesh out both sides of that character and have a natural relationship that didn't have to feel tacked on to somebody else's plot. And you know, and honestly, you watch those movies, she was going to let Hulk smash.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like it was a mistake for them to kill her character off. And now she says she's not interested in coming back to the MCU. She just has no interest in reprising that role. She's been very critical in recent months, saying that that was very exploitative. They said all those early Marvel movies were very exploitative of the female characters in them. Which
I heard that.
I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I think that in Iron Man 2, she was played very sexy, but I think the point in that was about it was about Tony. It was about her using her feminine wiles to exploit Tony for S.H.I.E.L.D. It wasn't about exploiting the character that way, because when the mask came off later on, she's one of the best parts of that movie. I mean, Iron Man 2 goes down as not one of the best Iron Man movies. I would argue that.
I thought it was great.
I would argue against it. Yeah.
Yeah. That sequence when she came in, that was, and just the script alone between Jon Favreau and Tony Stark and Black Widow, the way they're talking, and he's like, who is this that you just hired? And you know, the one-liners that came from that, I thought it was very well written. I really liked Iron Man 2.
I liked the inclusion of Black Widow. I liked that. I liked the way they introduced her. I love Sam Rockwell, so his character as what the hell did he play?
Nick something.
He played the one of the
arms dealer.
Yeah, the arms dealer.
Yeah.
I want to say Max something, but I'm getting Maxwell Lord.
Oh yeah, I forget. It's been so long.
It's immaterial. I love his character. I love the way they were building up the idea of the Armor Wars, which has been a fixture of Iron Man
for a long time
through the '80s, which they strangely never did. They squandered another opportunity there. You know, I mean, I guess the extremis thing that happened in Iron Man 3 is its whole other problem. I think maybe Mickey Rourke's character got played a little bit too much for humor, but I think he was an interesting, capable villain. So I don't think it gets enough credit. I think Iron Man 3 is really the weakest in the franchise.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I thought 1 was a really good origin movie. It was a little long, but I thought Iron Man was where they arrived, and putting together a solid movie, especially for origin to set up Avengers. I thought it was a really good movie. And 2 being a follow up, I think the gap of time that they knew, you know, with the cliche striking while the iron was hot. They didn't wait too long for the sequel. I thought it was pretty well done, a great follow-up. It didn't fall into that sophomore slump or jinx as they do in the music industry. I thought the timing of 2 was good. And probably because they gave Favreau a chance and didn't jump around with directors like they've done in the other movies.
I feel the weak part of Iron Man 2 was really, in my opinion, the palladium poisoning discussion in Iron Man 2. That was Iron Man 2, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that...
Man, you got me wanting to rewatch some of this stuff because I forget. Like, man, when you're in your, when I see these things come on and I'm sitting around and they come on regular cable, I think FX shows a lot of the Marvel movies, and they don't just show one. Like on the typical Saturday, they'll show 4 or 5 of the movies back to back.
You got them at the tip of your fingertip if you got Disney Plus, man.
It's streaming, yeah, I know, but it's all about going in there and pushing the menu. And I'm not trying to call myself lazy at all, but if you just turn on the TV and you're like cleaning up, so to speak, and you look over and say, "Oh, I remember this scene," and you sit down, I got to watch this scene. And then it's like, well, I got to see this scene. And then it go up next is Avengers 1. And you're like, oh, I got to sit and watch this. It's hard to tear yourself away. I mean, even when you got them on streaming sometimes. But I guess more or less because you got something else to do or you're doing something simultaneously. With me, it's most of the time cleaning up or drawing. So I'm sitting there and I can tell you I've got a certain amount of hand-picked movies, just saying from the Marvel Universe, that if it's on, I'm sitting there watching at least a scene out of it that I can think of. One of those movies that if it's on, I probably won't get up out the seat. And it could come on at any part of the movie, and I'll watch the rest of the movie and lose 2 hours is Captain America Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I think...
I personally sat there trying to do something, and they get to the first scene where Winter Soldier Bucky is fighting Cap in the streets with Black Widow, and he's throwing that knife around. He cuts into the van, and the music that's playing in the background is so eerie, and I'm just like watching. And then I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen. Let me get up, and I can't. And then he knocks his mask off, and he looks up, and he goes, Buck? And he goes, who the hell's Bucky? And it just like, oh,
he's like, why is there just an arm floating there?
Yeah.
My problem with the palladium poisoning element to Iron Man 2 was I think they're intentionally trying to draw a parallel to the Demon in the Bottle story, but without ever having to make Tony struggle with alcohol. And I think a lot of people have argued to me that, well, it's a family movie. But if we're going to go so far to tell a story about a man with post-traumatic stress disorder in Iron Man 3, then we can go out on a limb and we could see Tony get a monkey off his back in Iron Man 2. In Iron Man 1, we saw him turn from a billionaire that didn't care about anybody in the world to a guy who's willing to put his life on the line to save everybody, even people he didn't know. So to see that character grow even more would make even more sense. And it would dovetail nicely with the conversation he had in that movie. When he's in the donut shop, he's talking to Fury, and he's talking about how, he never felt important to his father and things like that. Those things would have made sense with that alcoholism storyline. I think that Demon in a Bottle is one of the most iconic stories in all of Iron Man. So why did it never make it to an Iron Man movie? Why was it never important enough? And it seems like we're very interested in putting topical concepts in those movies, now, and we're trying to make them prescient and make them about, I'm just going to say in general, a whole bunch of modern issues. But I think they chickened out on that one. And they chickened out in a really dumb way, because they showed him as a self-destructive alcoholic dancing with a DJ in the Iron Man arbor and shooting. So, why would you just not go the extra mile? And it sends a really bad message to say the U.S. government wanted to take away the Iron Man armor for Rhodey, not because Tony Stark didn't have good control of himself, because this dude was sick and dying. Like, what? Like, dude, you're supposed to be my best friend, Rhodey. I'm dying, and you're not like, hey, bro, you're dying? You're like, no, give me that. So give
it to me. So I can have my own movie. Yeah, Yeah, that is kind of it's a lot of. I mean, you could almost make a whole podcast of materials of why did they do that in those movies,
We
or
probably
the great
will.
things that they did do. Yeah, exactly. Or what would I've done if I had control of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in those cases?
That will
you
be
could
probably
because it's we probably will.
We announced earlier we're planning on doing retro reviews for movies, so I'm sure you'll hear a lot of that discussion if you decide to check it out.
Yeah, that definitely the case. Yeah, some definitely good movies, good moments in some of those movies. But yeah, I can think back because that was very early on in the Marvel phases of the movies. I mean, where we are now, you would have never thought that was all part. I saw a clip on one of the channels, YouTube, not too long ago, just kind of showing when Samuel Jackson's Nick Fury character introduced the Avengers Initiative. And just to think about it being so young of an idea, and I remember all the buzz, because social media wasn't at a point where it is now, where everybody's talking about every little thing. But back then, just the conversations that were in comic book stores or being on the phone with your best friend, like in our case, and just like, because, the rumors were just there. But just to hear that little bit of tidbit of information when he brings that folder and they talk about the Avengers Initiative, you're like, wait, they're going to do Avengers? And then you have no idea, like, what's coming. And just to think back then and go, what are they talking about doing here? This is crazy. And then for them to all be synced and linked all throughout all those movies, Thor and Captain America and Iron Man and just those core characters and what was coming. Oh my goodness!
Agent Coulson showing up all throughout that movie and getting blown off, and at the end, he's like, "Yeah, it's kind of a mouthful. We're thinking about shortening it to Shield." You're like, it was right in front of us the whole time.
Yeah. And then for them to do the TV show and so on after, I mean, it was just like. It was just like unraveling more and more as it went on. Like, how big can this thing get? And then the end all be all is the little after credit scenes where you first saw Thanos in the young CGI, where it wasn't even he looked totally different when he finally got on screen. But let me do this myself. That little thing, and just like
I know
what?
That's one of my that's one of my huge criticisms of Marvel, though, is because Marvel will constantly portray it as we have a plan. But if you go back and you line up those after credit sequences from all those movies, it's obviously was no plan, because Thanos decided to do it himself 2 times. It's just like, I'll have to do this myself. Well, I'll wait a couple more movies. Okay, I'll do it myself.
Okay, now I'm going to do it myself.
like they at the end of, I think, Dark World, they took the Aether to the, I want to say they took it to the Collector, and inside that episode, there was an Infinity Gauntlet, right?
I think so.
It was a big Easter egg in that movie. Is that there's an Infinity? Now you can say, well, that was just an Easter egg, or that was a distractor. But I feel like they did not have a plan. They BS that they have a plan, and I think that's why things go haywire. Is because they don't really have a plan. And a lot of the actors say that those movies aren't even done writing when they get to this, so they're changing them that much on the fly. And
I think they got more of a handle to it now as compared to back then. But just because there's so many different,
I wholly disagree, because I feel like the modern Marvel movies are not whole stories. They're little tiny stories with a whole bunch of attachments to them to lead you into the next movie. Iron Man had a beginning, middle, end. And so did Captain America. I mean, obviously, we knew where they were going. But once you got to Age of Ultron, that's when the movie started becoming more about the next movie, I think, than not so much about telling a complete story. Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I got to look at one of those timelines when we go more in depth about these. Yeah, because the importance of how we watch them, and then there's the timelines where people put it in chronological order on how you're supposed to watch the Marvel movies based on when things were supposed to happen, and they even made the list of putting in all the tie-ins of the TV shows in between the movies to make it make sense.
I would say for the most part, the TV shows were just. I mean, I'm not saying that they were total trash, but I would say that they were totally unimportant to the timeline altogether. They never ever really gave a fair stake to those shows. You know, you figure Agent Carter was entertaining, sure, but never anything happened in that show was significant to the timeline other than
there was maybe one or two episodes of Shield where they had something big happen.
That was
between earlier on with the Avengers movie.
When I started watching Agents of Shield, the first half of the first season was kind of a nothing burger. Now, that's because it was tied directly into Winter Soldier. So the turn in Winter Soldier, when you find out that Hydra had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., that turned that show into, holy cow, there's something really cool going on. So then you realized, oh, okay, it was waiting for its turn to be relevant because it was attached to the movie. So yes, stuff relevant to the MCU happened in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but only because the movie allowed them to show it, right? So, but nothing happened in the MCU that will be relevant to... I mean, if we look at the Disney shows, what has happened on the Disney shows that is relevant to the MCU other than Wanda going dark for Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, because she lost her kids in her show? That's the only thing I can think of. So far, even the streaming shows... Go ahead.
No, I was trying to remember. I don't think I caught all of those. So, yeah, I have to research that.
Yes, in my opinion, not a whole lot of relevant stuff has happened in the streaming series or the television series that had a direct effect on the movies. It only went the other way. So if they're only significant enough to carry water for the movies, then how significant it is to keep watching them, you know? And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Jeff Loeb was in charge of that by that point. They made Jeff Loeb the head of Marvel TV at the time, and he had to make the announcement that, okay, these are no longer attached to the MCU. So where in the first two seasons, it was directly connected and the movies were affecting the show, but then they started blazing their own trail. And I honestly feel like they missed an opportunity because I feel like at some point the Avengers deserved to know that Agent Coulson wasn't dead. And what would that have? Remember, Agent Coulson was the reason the Avengers got together in the first movie because they kind of did it for Agent Coulson, right? So I think that I would love to see what would happen if Cap found out that they were being lied to about the death of Coulson for all those years.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess I didn't put that together when I was thinking, when that was going on. And I only saw a handful of actual S.H.I.E.L.D. episodes. Because I know towards the end, didn't they introduce the new version of Ghost Rider when he's driving the car or something like that?
They did.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah,
I heard about that.
If it's somebody's favorite character, I'm sure they were very happy to see him on screen. I'm not even a fan of that version of the character. I feel like it's far less iconic. I think a demon on a motorcycle is way more practical than a guy in a muscle car, personally. But that's a weird argument to have. Yeah, how do I justify that point?
But again, that goes back to how we started this conversation. The cinematic universe having an influence on the comic side of things that was introduced in the comic, and then they put it in the show, and I'm like, that's weird that they did that.
I would say
at the time,
if there's anything about the Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show that I think was its redeeming thing, Crusher Creel, the Absorbing Man. I never in a million years thought I'd see that guy on film. I never saw it.
Yeah,
I would say he was used fairly well. They would have like weird one-off, almost Monster of the Week secret origins for characters that never got used but could possibly show up in the cinematic universe. I think Graviton was one of them, and stuff like that. So if they
me not seeing it, for me not seeing it and you seeing it, the way you just described that, where they're using obscure characters, you know what that reminds me of? Smallville. How it was a certain string of episodes that they had throughout their 10 seasons where it was like villain of the week type thing. And you were just like, who are, but a lot of them, probably 9 times out of 10, were actually characters that were in the comic book that they decided to shed a little light on. Now, the writing was a little bit tighter knit on those Smallville episodes. So they tied into the main story at some point, and they always referred back to it. So that's interesting that you brought that up. And
again, that's my tendency. Again, we're from that generation where nothing is all bad. So when I watch it, I'm like, oh, well, that was something good about it. And I think there's always something good about a lot of things. But I think the where these shows fall, now this is going back to our original discussion. I think where the shows and the movies fall down is not trusting that the source material was good enough. And I feel that a lot of what we don't like about what's happening in the movies is about the conceit of Hollywood is smarter than those guys. But I think that we're getting the best results for Marvel movies or DC movies or just any comic book movie in general, superhero or not, when Hollywood says, people love this, let's just be faithful to it. And it's the Hollywood changes that really upset the apple cart and make the confusion and make audiences go, well, I don't really like that. So,
well, does this play in the hand when I've heard this used a lot from a comic book artist's point of view, is that when you're drawing a story, and we can use the past history of comics, DC, Marvel, Image, whoever. When you're drawing a story and you want something anticlimactic or something huge to happen, they always say the cliche thing is that there's no budget in drawing comics. But when you're doing these TV shows and these movies, there are budgets for actors, actresses, CGI, any type of enhancement. So, you want to blow up the universe, that's a double page spread in a comic book. You want to blow up the universe in a movie, that's going to cost you. So I think there's any of that. I guess my question is that relevant?
I don't think it's relevant anymore.
Decisions that they make.
I don't think it's relevant anymore. I don't think it's relevant anymore for a lot of things. Like if you can look at the Berlanti superhero shows, they had their lumps. In my opinion, it was a little too geared for interpersonal drama and less about superheroes. I kind of feel like the points were repetitious. I don't think they really plunged the depths. They tried to cherry pick villains and make them the monster of the week or the monster of the season, and I think they misrepresent them in a lot of cases to make really trite points about character. Like, this villain is actually Barry from the future, which is completely non-canonical in the canon and in canon the comics, but made a really goofy plot line for the show that everybody's supposed to clutch their pearls about. But I remember an instance where you had a season where they were going to do King Shark. Someone you never would have thought you'd see on TV. Now, this is before the Suicide Squad movie. So they knew that was coming, so they kind of just they tightened their belt a little bit on the budget for everything around it. And now we live in a world. It's turning into a dirty word, and I understand why. But I think industry-wise, it's a great tool. You live in a world of AI where everybody's putting a Batman versus Deathstroke video on your timeline on Facebook because they've got access to these tools. So we don't live in a world where exploding a universe or having a bombastic superhero fight should really break the bank, because you have computers that are going to do that job for you, and all you have to do is tweak it and make sure, as a writer, as a creator, as a producer, as a director, that it has the fidelity to the comic book. So now you have that double page spread on the screen. You know, Zack Snyder, in my opinion, I think it's a divisive issue. I don't love Zack Snyder the way a lot of Snyder bros do. But Zack Snyder, in the case of Watchmen, in the case of BVS, in the case of his Man of Steel, he went through the comics and he curated these moments out of comics, and he said, I want this to come to film. And you look at that Watchmen movie, in a lot of cases are beat for beat exactly what was on the page of some comic book somewhere. I think the problem is, as he trusted the iconography of the superheroes, he didn't trust the stories of the superheroes. So he divorced himself a lot on what the values of that character were. I saw him doing a Comic-Con discussion where he was chuffing at the idea that Batman wouldn't kill. He thought it was dumb. Well, if you think it's dumb, it's central to the character, then you shouldn't be making a movie about the character. And a bunch of Snyder bros that want to watch a Punisher movie in a bat suit are going to argue with me about that. But these characters have a unique personality. They have unique character traits, and we stop trusting them. You don't have 85 years of Batman anymore. So the character has been timeless, and it has changed, but certain things have never changed about it. And when you're bringing an Elseworlds version of the character to a screen, who's okay with killing, who's okay with this, or who diverges from the canon of the character, then you get in dangerous territory where the people that are making the movie want to see that in the comic books, which goes back to our original discussion, where the comic books can damage what's happening in the movies can damage what's happening in the comics if we're not careful with how we utilize those storylines. And I think the Zack Snyderverse is a good example of something that would have been a bull in a china shop if it was allowed to continue for comics canon. If it was successful, it probably would have wrecked DC before it did some of its best work. And honestly had a renaissance, because you figure Snyder was coming out during the New 52 when DC was kind of pulling rabbits out of their hat and trying to make things feel new, like Marvel did a decade before with Miles Morales. So you had these new kind of ideas, and people were really into them for a little while, but they're like, no, we miss that other guy. We miss our original guy. Because Marvel never gave up the baby with the bathwater. DC did. DC gave up their original canon. So then you had Rebirth happen, and I think the freshness of bringing back the old thing is what sang about Rebirth. Rebirth felt so fun because you're like, oh, we're getting back all of that stuff that was robbed from us. We're getting back our old canon. But now DC's at it again with the Absolute Universe, where they get to have all that fun, but not kill the golden goose, the goose that laid the golden egg, right? So,
yeah.
So I think that we do live in a world where you can have those moments. We live in a world where you can have a one-to-one. I mean, I know you didn't watch it. It's not your cup of tea. But if you look at the the Sandman series that went on Netflix a year and a half, two back, that first season, that a Netflix show has a panel for panel representation to the first graphic novel. If you look through that show in a lot of places, and that's done on a much smaller scale, streaming scale, TV scale. Now, it doesn't even have to be a big budget movie.
Yeah, that's true. So, segueing into what we were originally talking about, let me ask you this, and you have free reign for source material, Marvel, DC, any of the independent companies. What storylines are your favorites that you would love to see? No budget constraints. What storylines, crossovers? It could be a small storyline. It could be a single movie. It could be a trilogy. It could be a ongoing serialized show that you read in comics that you would love to see translated on film as a dream project.
I think the hands down, I would say the first thing that comes to my mind is Batman and the Court of Owls story.
Yeah,
I think Court of Owls would be a phenomenal movie, trilogy, series, what have you. I don't know. I don't know which is the right choice because I think it has the new. It doesn't just retread an old story about a villain we've seen in 100 different iterations, but it pays honor to the story, to the canon of Batman. So it's deep bench in a way that inserts itself into the history of the Waynes. It inserts itself into the history of Gotham, and this weird conspiracy theory about this cabal of owl related, and honestly it parallels a lot of with the real world and real conspiracy theories with things like the Bohemian Grove, the owl stuff there. So like I think there's a lot of cool ground you can play with there. Now, I would say maybe a movie, maybe a set of movies. I think that if it was done for TV, the instinct would be to do it too low budget and it would become cheese. Now, I think, yeah, because you got to figure Batman fighting an endless series of these Talon zombies, essentially, through the whole thing, only to have to face Lincoln March as the ultimate boss as Owlman at the end. I mean, it's just a totally badass movie,
Yeah, and then if I'm not mistaken, I have to re-reference that, but they were trying to get Nightwing to be their leader.
He was. Well, actually, Nightwing's grandfather was one of the first Talons to attack, and Nightwing was being prepared to be a eventual Talon when he was taken on as Bruce's ward. So you could have him as and you could make it a citywide threat and bring in a lot of Bat Family. It doesn't have to be a 1-to-1 parody of the movie. It would give you a good opportunity to put some Nightwings in there, maybe a couple of Robins, maybe a Batgirl. You get all the representation you want out of that movie. Make it sweeping. I say make it a trilogy. I think it'd be pretty cool because, the first movie could be about Bruce trying to unlock the mystery. That's Batman never gets to be a detective in movies. They had it in maybe a little bit in the Pattinson film, but I think the first movie could be Batman the detective trying to unlock the mystery of this thing. The second movie could be Batman trapped in that maze, going through the ritual of the owls, while the other Bat Family is trying to find out where Batman is and fight off an onslaught of Talons that the Court of the Owls has released. And then the third movie could be the big showdown between Lincoln March and Batman. I think that'd be great. I think that would be amazing film. Let me see, what else? What else can I think of?
Once you got your cast, correct, instead of pulling from the old and trying to get new. Once you solidified your cast, I think there's a number of X-Men storylines I would like to see. Extinction Agenda is one of them, and probably the Claremont Jim Lee stuff in the X-Men, maybe 1 through the first 12, I would say. Not going, maybe a new trilogy like 1, 2, and 3, with those first 12 issues kind of interloped into all of those, where you get to see Gambit with the team and the gold team and the blue team, with Magneto there, the introduction to Omega Red, Sabretooth, and Psylocke thrown in there. I think that would have been that probably would have worked out pretty well, to see. if you had the right cast and the right budget, I think it would be
I think
pretty awesome to see.
as a show, yes. I think as a movie or series of movies, I think it would have trouble because, if I remember right, X-Men #1 was Acolytes, right? It was Magneto and the Acolytes.
Yeah.
But by the time you get to the Omega Red saga, that was like issue 5.
4 and 5.
So I kind of feel like it's that group of stories, that first 12 issues, is just too discontinuous to be a feature film or a couple of feature films. Maybe maybe if you had a talented writer, but I kind of feel like that the stakes are backwards on that one. Where I would, if I had to make it a series of films, make a Magneto story. See, then I'm breaking it out. I'm not actually telling that story. I'm just making my own thing out of what it would be. But I think Magneto and the Acolytes, in my opinion, Magneto is a formidable villain for the X-Men going back. So having him have a crew of devotees, I think that's an Omega level threat. So I think that would be kind of an end of a trilogy kind of thing, not so much first of a trilogy.
The beginning, yeah, and it didn't, like you said, because that story was so discontinuous. You're making your own movie then, instead of adapting one. So yeah, I get you. I'm trying to think of some other. I thought this was interesting because we're talking about what we've already seen and what we would like to see. I think you struck it with Court of Owls. Now, I've heard rumors that this new Pattinson Batman is supposed to have some inklings of the Court of Owls, but with Two-Face and everything else involved, I just don't understand it unless they're planning on doing a third. That's a lot for a second movie.
We had to confess to everyone that we were not pleased with the Robert Pattinson Batman film.
No, not by any means.
Yeah, we were very excited. We're both big fans of DC. Some of us came later to DC love than others.
Yeah, me.
But
that's me. Ladies and gentlemen, you will hear the backstory and the origin story on how I became a DC fan from not liking their comics at all during high school years when Savage Jody and I met way back in the 90s. So you will get to hear that. So keep tuning in.
But we went to the Robert Pattinson Batman movie together, and we got about 35 minutes in, and Telly and I just kind of like looked over at each other. We didn't have to say a word. We locked eyes during that movie. We were like, what in the hell are we watching? Like, I'm not one of those guys that gets wrapped around the axle about characters being changed or cast being changed and stuff like that, because I think every version of these characters is somebody else's version of this character, so not every we come from a generation where there were so few superhero movies that we were going to go see all of them. I went to see The Mask. I didn't know who The Mask was when he was a comic book, but when that movie came out, I had to put my money on that counter to see that movie because I wanted more superhero movies to get made. So that was the kind of that. So I was always patronizing every superhero movie, but now we've gotten to a world where it's okay that things are being made for other generations, for younger people. I didn't watch Cloak and Dagger. Wasn't huge fans of the Cloak and Dagger characters, but if that movie came out in 1994, you would have got my money on it. If that show came out in 1994, you have my money. But I just. I sense that it's for somebody, and I know what it is, and I'm like, that's a thing, and I'm glad somebody likes it.
That's true.
I think the choices that they made with Batman, though, in this specific Batman movie, I don't think they complement the character very well. In fact, my controversial opinion is, outside of the animated series, very few Batman projects have represented Batman at all. I could go on a tirade about how the Burton Batman films aren't Batman films, nor are the Nolan films, nor are any of the movies that Zack Snyder made, for a lot of reasons. And it's because they're just not trusting who the character is. And I think that that's the problem with those, is that they just don't trust who the character is. But when we were watching this movie, we were like, who is this for? Now, Telly actually knows somebody that's their favorite Batman film, so I understand there's people out there that love it. But I am very glad that this will not be the Batman going forward, because in that movie, I understand the choices that were being made. I understand they wanted to make a Dark Seven-like crime drama, but I don't feel like that we lost what Riddler was supposed to be to get the, hey, look, what if Riddler was like this?
Yeah, that's true.
And as much as I love, say, Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker, and I thought, Joker as this punk rock, chaos-embracing street thug was kind of a cool idea, I wouldn't want it to be my only Joker.
No
more than I'd want to be the face-painted Al Capone-esque Jared Leto Joker to be my only Joker. I can tell you which one I prefer of those two, but I don't think either of them are good representations of the Joker, because Warner Brothers has a tendency to invite auteurs in, and auteurs say, well, I have an idea for a movie. So then you get things like the Joaquin Phoenix Joker film. You get something that is singular of its own. It's making its own statement. It's using a mask of the character to tell a story that it wants to tell, instead of telling a story about the character that you know by that name.
Very interesting. Yeah, there's a ton of. Well, I'm surprised you didn't say you would like to see a Valiant movie made.
Whoa.
Not Death Made.
Oh boy, you opened up a can of worms. Well, there was a time in my life where I would have said that, and for those of you out there in listener land, I was a huge fan of VH1 Valiant. In fact, I have not a complete run, because the later the butt end of the Valiant VH1 line is kind of hard to come by, and I was kind of phasing out at that point. But I have a very complete VH1 Valiant line, starting with the original Solar Man of the Atom and Magnus Robot Fighter and things like that. I clocked onto those books, and I was really impressed with how they built a cohesive universe, and they gave it a reason. I think Jim Shooter was on to something really cool at the time. I don't think Jim Shooter is the genius that Jim Shooter would tell you he is. But I think there are characters and stories in that universe that were great, and I do not think that modern Valiant represents those characters or those stories any more than those movies I was just talking about.
I mean, if you can imagine an Avengers style movie with all the characters and costumes and CGI of them being on screen at one time, if you could, with Valiant, and I'm talking Exo Manowar, Solar, Turok, all of those characters, I think that would have been something cool to see.
I honestly feel like, would it be kind of cool? Yes, but I think really the beauty of most of the Valiant characters was, or books, I'm going to say books, most of the Valiant books, is what they were unto themselves. So I would say a VH1 version of Exo Manowar as a film would be banging. And it wouldn't just be Iron Man over again, despite what people would read it on his face, because the character is so different, because the character contains almost like a Conan aspect to it and stuff like that. So you got like an opportunity for comedy with the fish out of water, and you have a high sci-fi thing, but you also have like a nobility to the character. Archer and Armstrong would make a hilarious buddy comedy. So things like that. There's a lot of things in the so like I think even their biggest crossovers weren't typically them all teaming up to punch things in the face, except for the later ones that were not as good. So things like Birthquake and stuff like that were a little bit more atypical comic book crossovers, where Unity Unity was almost like an event was happening that some of the characters were central to, and then the other characters were just running through the picture. So, Archer and Armstrong was connected to Unity just because they were locked in a jail and a dinosaur punched through their wall and let them escape. That was it.
Yeah. I can see the similarities.
So I would say, in the vein of what you were talking about, an X-Men movie, it would be big, and I kind of feel like you'd almost have to have some movies in advance to introduce the characters, but do something massive like X-cutioner song. I think
I remember that. I remember when that came out, with the books being polybagged and with the cards and everything that was going on with it. I think that would have been but again, that would have to be after you revisited the X-Men, kind of revamped them. It's kind of a middle of the road type thing. Like if it's a trilogy, it's in the middle when you handle that.
Right. Yeah. Like I said,
you can't do that as an introductory story.
Yeah. You could. Yeah. Oh, I mean, even if you did it as a saga, you'd have to have. You got a lot of characters introduced there. You got a lot of ensemble characters introduced there. So, and I don't even know if you got enough time for that. So, like, maybe if you did X-cutioner song as a Game of Thrones-esque TV series, that would might work. So you'd have plenty of time to introduce all those characters, all those ensemble characters, and then understand the backstories of each of them and their challenges, and that might work. I think that would be extraordinarily expensive.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Trying to think what else would be good. It sounds like you're probably gonna get some version of Hush to the screen soon enough. I could see that happening. I wouldn't mind seeing a live action version of Under the Red Hood, but I kind of feel like it's already been done, and it would be hard to top Under the Red Hood, the animated, because it's so good. I mean, it's one of the best animated DC's ever done. Phenomenal voice acting by Jensen Ackles, who's like everybody's favorite star right now because of his work on The Boys. I mean, he's everywhere. He's gonna be on that Vault Rising show. He just finished up The Boys. He just off at Supernatural 5 years ago. He's on a show called Countdown on Prime. That guy's just busy as hell. A lot of people saying he's their favorite for Batman. I am personally a fan of Jensen Ackles. I was a big Supernatural fan. I don't think he's right for Batman. I think he's a little too short for Batman, really. So. I think
they could play off that. Michael Keaton looked tall as hell in the movies.
Well, and the other thing is that I think that Jensen is very successful at being Jensen, but I think that the one mistake that all of the films do, Marvel didn't do this actually. I think Marvel played it smart. Is that when you look at the Wave 1 characters in all the Marvel movies. Nobody knew who Chris Evans was when he was cast. Nobody knew who... I mean, Chris Evans had been around, but Chris Evans was not Chris Evans when he was cast. No. So, I feel that we need to get away from the idea of casting that guy that everybody knows to be...
Oh, yeah.
So, open some auditions. Give that opportunity to some actor that we haven't heard his name yet. Because, I hate to say it, he's going to start out cheap because every time you use him, he's going to get progressively more expensive. So if you want a character that's going to be with the franchise for longer periods of time, then you need to get somebody that's cheap in the upfront. Not to mention the fact that there's a lot of characters, when you cast them, they come with writers. And those writers insist that, as much as The Rock, and I like The Rock, look the look of Black Adam. Because The Rock has writers in his contract that he's not allowed to be defeated on screen in any way, it really ties your hand on what that story's going to look like. Look at the first Suicide Squad movie. Bad for a lot of reasons. Sorry, David Ayer. I get the general impression by watching that movie that they did an editorial hack job on what that movie was supposed to be, so it's not his fault that it was that bad. But the star-studded casting of that movie, in my opinion, made the Suicide look like the not Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad's supposed to have a lot of stakes to it, where characters are expendable. And casting Will Smith as one of the main characters, you knew damn well he's one of the characters that weren't expendable. Harley Quinn is a money-making juggernaut for every kid that walks into Hot Topic. So DC is not gonna kill that character. So who was really suicidal in the Suicide Squad? Absolutely no one. And I think that is something that James Gunn fixed right away in his version of Suicide Squad. He showed you these guys are expendable. We killed 3 of them in the first 10 minutes of the movie. So,
yeah, that's true. That is true. So yeah, I would like to see a Deathstroke movie. I think that would come off well.
If they had made Ben Affleck's Batman film, that would have been phenomenal, because that was.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
with
the story
was Deathstroke.
The story that I've heard about that movie was Lex Luthor tells Deathstroke Batman's secret identity. Deathstroke holds Batman responsible for the death of his son. So Deathstroke, over the course of a series of movies, dismantles Bruce Wayne's life as Bruce Wayne, releases all the villains from Arkham Asylum. Batman has to fight all those, and then when he's completely tired, he banes them, basically. That would have been a phenomenal movie.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been a phenomenal movie. So, like, it's a shame that Ben Affleck got chased off the project. I'm not one of those guys that hates on Ben Affleck. I think I was on board for Ben Affleck. I was just not on board for the movies they were making with him.
Yeah, that's true. I thought he did a great job in a lot of the stuff that came around that time and afterwards that he portrayed Batman. The Town is one
great
of
movie.
them.
Yeah, great movie.
Yeah, I thought he did a great job in that. The Accountant was a great movie. It was basically The Punisher.
Right.
I need to see the second one because the second one has Bernthal in it.
You don't need to see it.
Oh, okay.
You don't need to see it.
Wow.
I mean, it was a. What you just loved about the first movie, you are not going to love about the second movie.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, the autism factor of the main character is played almost for comedy in the second movie, and it's treated very weird. So, like, as a film, it's fine, but if you like that character and said, I wanted more of this character, you're probably not going to like what you get out of the second one.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't break my neck to go see it I think just the timing of it was dumbed down. I don't even know if it came out in theaters or if it went straight.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm so blind.
I think it did.
Unless it's a superhero movie, I almost don't pay attention to theaters, because only movies I go see with you or I go see with Jareth.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. They're probably, and this is going to be an ongoing topic as I think of them as I go through my comic collection. So it's something that we'll revisit in future episodes for the fans out there that want to hear. And if you're able to message us, we would love to hear your takes on what movies you think storylines should be adopted in movies or serial series for the comic industry, for our industry. Even casting ideas.
Well, since you mentioned that, I guess it would be good to tell people where they could reach us. If you go to our website, which is secret-identities.net. Is that right? One second. Let me confirm. I think I held out for the .com, actually. But while I'm doing this, yes, it is secret-identities.com. We have a contact us there. We also have email at contact@secret-identities.com, secretidentitiesmedia@gmail.com, or you can find us on our Facebook page. Just search Secret Identities. And we have a Discord server set up that we'll get information out to you for soon.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was great talking to you as usual on those topics. I think we got some pretty good things there lined up, especially for the next couple of episodes where we'll be talking about our lineup for our retro movie reviews, our current movie reviews, with Masters of the Universe on the horizon. I'm very excited about that one, as well as Supergirl coming up, and then right after that is the new Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland. So you guys will be hearing from us about those movies and getting excited for those. So we'll definitely be in to tell you a little bit about that. But please tune in to hear more about us and our takes on the different genres and excitement for the comics and stuff that are coming out. And we'll be touching a little bit more on what we do behind the scenes in helping bringing those comics and excitement to you. So.
yeah, and we're recording these first few, but we'll eventually start doing a live stream and recording that live stream. So we'll keep a posted schedule so you'll be able to log in, interact with us in real time. It's been thank you for attending for our first one. It's been a fun experience. We're probably gonna get a little bit better from here, but bear with us. And it's been a lot of fun. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.